West England, a brighter picture for northeast England. Also down the eastern side of England, a good deal of fine sunny weather for some to begin with, but the outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy over the hills towards the west, gradually making their way eastwards as we go through the morning. So for many parts of England and Wales, it is going to be quite a grey day, and there will be a bit of rain at times, though it shouldn't be too heavy for most of us. Further north, a slightly brighter picture, similar to today really, some blustery showers rattling through, though the wind's not quite as strong. In the north, temperatures getting into the high teens, low 20s, mid 20s for some of us towards the southeast. Later on tomorrow, we will start to see the cloud and any rain across England and Wales drifting away towards the east. So some clearer skies developing as we go through the night, and the showers in the north should start to die out as well. And then Sunday for most is looking fine with a decent amount of sunshine, with temperatures rising as we go into Monday. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. There's congestion in Warwickshire at the intersection of the M6 and the M69. It's at M6 Junction 2. It's all due to an accident on the M46 on the roundabout, which is below the M6. Long delays on the M25 clockwise in Kent due to an earlier broken down vehicle just after Junction 1A, the QE2 bridge. Congestion going back almost as far as Romford. Also on the QE2 bridge, there's delays clockwise between Junction 31 Lakeside and 1A for Dartford. Estimated travel time there around 30 minutes. Queues on the M25 anti-clockwise in Surrey. 3 lanes closed for an accident between Junction 13 Staines and 12 for the M3. And the M11 northbound in Essex is partially blocked for an accident just after Junction 8 for Bishop Stortford. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway. An incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. David from Kent was our last big winner. Listen to what he had to say about getting that winning call.
Hi, I'm David from Kent and I won £15,000 and it couldn't have come at a better time. I was gobsmacked. What have you got to lose for what it costs? In fact, I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, happy Friday to you. It's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight. Look, it cannot be a coincidence that when it comes to the riots we've just seen, so many of them, 7 in fact, of those areas, they are the worst deprived in England. That cannot be a coincidence. Let's have a look at what is going on. And while it's still relative calm here, people are on the streets in Belfast. We will be following that. Also today, we've seen people sent to jail for posts on their Facebook. Is that fair and needed or overkill? Also, many are calling on the government to adopt an agreed definition of Islamophobia and to give it legal protection. Do we need that? And if anything was to convince you to have a career change, it might be this. Barclays have just become the first bank to lift the banker's bonus cap. Your thoughts? All that and more, but first, the 6 o'clock news headlines.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Former Labour councillor Ricky Jones has been remanded in custody after appearing in court on charges of encouraging violent disorder at a rally organised by Stand Up to Racism. Jones was filmed addressing a crowd at the London demonstration on Wednesday evening. The 57-year-old was charged at Westminster Magistrates' Courts, which heard he gave a speech to a crowd which was capable of encouraging or assisting the commission of violent disorder. Plea and trial preparation has been set for the 6th of September. A 30-year-old man has been jailed for 8 months for racially aggravated intentional harassment during the riots in Leeds. The judge said his sentence was reduced to take his guilty plea into account. At one point, Jordan Plain was filmed with others mocking Muslim prayers. Meanwhile, a Facebook user who urged people to attack a Leeds hotel used to house asylum seekers has also been jailed. 28-year-old Jordan Parler has been sentenced to 20 months after pleading guilty to publishing written material intended to stir racial hatred. Meanwhile, 2 men have been sent to prison for an attack on what prosecutors described as pro-EDL protesters after rival demonstrations clashed in Leeds city centre last Saturday. 21-year-old Samir Ali and 31-year-old Adnan Ghaffur admitted a fray earlier this week. It comes as the Prime Minister has issued a warning to those using social media to encourage violence and disorder. Visiting the Metropolitan Police Command Centre in central London, Sir Keir Starmer said social media is not a law-free zone. He said the police are actively pursuing those breaking the law online with more swift sentences. The National Police Chiefs Council has said 595 arrests have been made in relation to disorder across the country following the Southport stabbings. Sir Keir Starmer says those committing offences online are still culpable and will be brought to justice.
Those that are thinking about getting involved in disorder of any sort is very clear. If you involve yourself in disorder, then the full force of the law will be applied. And the fact that we've seen this week people not just in court but being sentenced to significant terms of custody for their behaviour just a few days ago, I think is a very important message to anyone who's thinking of getting involved in the coming days.
A man who swore at a police officer before kicking him amid disorder in central London has been sentenced. 20-year-old Ozzy Kush swore at officers responding to widespread disorder in Westminster on the 31st of July. Officers with the Metropolitan Police were walking along Whitehall in the direction of Trafalgar Square, informing demonstrators that a dispersal order was in force and encouraging people to leave the area. Taking exception to their presence, Kush was recorded walking across the path of the officers before sticking his middle finger towards an officer and then kicking him. Meanwhile, several police forces have issued further CCTV appeals to identify suspects they believe to have been responsible for some of the violence and disorder. Detectives investigating riots in Merseyside issued images of 11 people after a separate appeal helped identify individuals earlier this week. Greater Manchester Police have issued a similar appeal for information. They are asking the public to contact them directly or to contact Crime Stoppers if they recognise any of the people pictured here. To other news now. Disgraced former BBC News presenter Huw Edwards has been asked to return his salary by the corporation's board. It comes after the 62-year-old admitted in court last week to having indecent images of children. 7 of the 41 images were described as being in the most serious category of child abuse pictures and videos. The BBC's board has told him to repay his salary from the time he was arrested in November last year, saying the presenter undermined trust in the BBC and brought it into disrepute. Former US President Donald Trump has agreed to debate Vice President Kamala Harris on television in the race to the White House. It's been confirmed the Republican nominee will debate his Democratic rival on the 10th of September on the US network ABC. And Trump told a news conference at his Florida home last night that he also wants to add 2 more debates on Fox News and NBC. During his news conference, Mr. Trump claimed his opponent wasn't intellectually up to the challenge. Former reality TV star Katie Price has appeared in court today after being arrested at Heathrow Airport last night. It comes after a judge issued a warrant following her failure to attend a High Court bankruptcy hearing last month. Price was declared bankrupt in November 2019 and then again in March this year. Ms. Price is expected to attend a further hearing later this month. And finally, in sport, Lee Carsley has been named as interim head coach of the England men's football squad ahead of the upcoming Nations League fixtures. Carsley will step up to replace Gareth Southgate, who brought his 8 years in charge to an end after defeat in Spain in the Euro 2024 final last month. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll be back in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for that, Tatiana. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. One of my favourite parts of the programme is when you do the headlines, listening to my panel's responses to some of the stories. We were just hearing there the announcement about the interim England manager, and one of my panel was going, who? Who even is it? Who even is it? Do you know who he was? Is it a good appointment in your mind or not? Alongside me, the guy I've just been talking about, the Conservative peer, Lord Sean Bailey, and the fireman trade unionist and author Paul Embry. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
You dissatisfied with that appointment?
It's not dissatisfied, I just don't know who he is. But to be clear, I know nothing about football. Just be clear about that.
Yeah, I don't know that much myself.
I could talk to you about it. You haven't asked me, have you?
No, I didn't ask you because I thought if I start asking you, because I could tell that you knew straight away by your reaction to it, I thought I won't get into any of the news of the day. We'll be talking about football. I thought I'd move on. And all I can say is thank goodness it's Friday, everybody. Don't know how you've been feeling this week, but what a week. I feel like I could sleep for a week. All I've got to say is Dewberry Tavern opens at 7:15 and I personally cannot wait. But between now and then, there's a lot I want to get into with you guys at home tonight. You know the drill, don't you? It's about very much your opinion at home. Get in touch all the usual ways. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course you can tweet or X me. I've got to say relative calm, thankfully, on the streets of England. Long may it continue. There are some people taking to the streets in Belfast. I will be cutting across there live imminently, and I can show you some of the scenes there. But I just want to focus as well on the streets of England. As I'm saying, they are literally quite calm right now. But it caught my eye that when it came to the rioting that has been occurring, it took place in 7 out of the 10 most deprived areas. And I don't actually think that that was a coincidence. I'm talking about places like Middlesbrough, Blackpool, Liverpool, Hartlepool, Hull, Manchester and Blackburn. I've also got to state the obvious as well and point out that many of these affected areas in this way also have a higher than average proportion of asylum seekers in taxpayer-funded accommodation. Now, it is quite unpopular along many to have the conversations about what has caused the situation, but more importantly, how do we resolve these issues so that we can move forward and hope that all of this is a thing of the past? Paul Embry.
Economic insecurity has caused it. Immigration levels, a lack of integration in some of these communities, a fear of crime increasing in a lot of these communities. And this is a simmering resentment that has been boiling for years. And anyone who knows working class communities and comes from working class communities, I think all three of us do.
In fact, actually, hold that thought, because I did just mention Belfast. Before we get stuck into the calmness of the streets of England, let's just cross live to Belfast. Our reporter, Dougie Beattie, is there as we speak. Good evening, Dougie. What's happening there?
Well, we have 2 protests, one pro-immigration, one anti-immigration. Must be said that the pro side, full of civil servants, is much, much larger than this anti-immigration side. And I'm actually joined by a man who gave his all for country, Paris during the Falklands War, and you are really trying to get some sense into this anti-immigration side.
Well, I'm here. I fully support what the anti-immigration process or protest is for. I am against mass illegal immigration and the impact that is having on communities, particularly working class communities here in Belfast. But I'm also here to try and ensure, to the best of my ability and what little influence I have, that it is a peaceful protest, that we don't let young folk get pulled into violence or labelled right-wing thugs or extremists in any way. The vast majority of people here, in fact all the people here, are responsible people. They're here for peaceful protest. They're facing severe provocation from the other side, I might add, but they're not here for violence.
I mean, you've dealt with young men who need shaped and guided all your life. I mean, what hope is these people in these areas?
Well, I've spoke to young people already here today, and I've actually spoke to them. They've had a warning that if they don't remove face coverings, that they can be liable to arrest, and the law states that. I've explained that. I've taken young fellas to the side and explained that to them. Now, many of them are wearing face coverings because they're worried about their jobs. They're worried about being identified. What I've said to them is, if you get arrested, you're going to lose your job anyway.
There you go, Michelle, and things are really kicking off here. You can actually see the police here are on the protester side. The immigration side are all togged out in their TSG uniforms, while if you just come with me, Stevie, just follow me this way very, very quickly. If you look at the other side of the protest, there's a line of snatched Land Rovers between us here, and the police on the other side are standing in short-sleeved shirts, as you can see, and the provocation from this side is massive, and most of these people here are public sector workers, so it is starting to be quite the evening here in Belfast.
Remains peaceful for now. Thank you very much. I've got to say, everybody at home, I am not a riot policing or protest policing expert by any stretch of the imagination. But isn't it just basic common sense that if you've got two groups with completely differing opinions, such heightened emotions, why don't you try and keep them a little bit more separate? I've seen so many instances now where these kind of two different groups, they're almost brought to within inches of each other. I don't really understand that. It's counterproductive, if you ask me. Anyway, Paul, sorry, what was you saying?
Yeah, and I was saying all these things are a perfect storm, really, of economic and social disruption. The economic insecurity on top of immigration levels, on top of integration issues, serious integration issues, on top of, you know, the perception of crime in working-class neighbourhoods and so on. And this stuff has just been there for years. People think this has just come out of a clear blue sky. This happened, you know, just after the election of a Labour government, and it came from nowhere. Anyone who's lived amongst these communities knows that this has been simmering for a long, long, long time, and I completely condemn the violence. There's no excuse for the violence at all. But until we address some of the root causes, then these issues are not going to go away. In fact, they're going to get worse. And my fear and my observation is that the political class in this country has got its head in the sand. What they are doing is they're going onto TV, whether it's Keir Starmer or media commentators or whoever, and saying, this is about Tommy Robinson, or this is about disinformation from hostile foreign states, or this is about Elon Musk, or this is about Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman making, you know, provocative statements about immigration, which I think is insulting to ordinary people, because it tells them actually you've got no agency and you're a bit thick and you're easily duped by these people. If you can't get your head around the fact that these issues have been burning for years and what we're seeing now is them playing out in a violent way on our streets, then frankly, you're not fit to be in power. And it seems to me today, over the last day or two, actually, there's now a serious element of complacency in the commentary where a lot of people think, oh, it's great, we had the counter-protests and they pushed the protesters back, even though the protesters didn't really...
Protesters weren't there.
Well, this is the point I'm making. They weren't actually really there, were they? And therefore, all is well again in Britain, and, you know, we're a peaceful country at ease with itself and there's nothing to worry about anymore. That level of complacency is dangerous because those issues which have led to the violence have not gone away.
Look, ordinarily I come in here and Paul and I have a bit of a row or we disagree, but I'm sorry, on this one, you're right. And I'd like to go a bit deeper. You made a comment Michelle, that it's in the poorest communities in the country that this happened. The reason it's happened is because people who are poor are closer to needing the council, the government, and they feel the change in resources first. Many months ago, I said if we don't take some notice of the impact that immigration has on communities, that a lack of integration has on communities, we are stirring up social problems, and we're seeing it now. So if you're someone who needs council housing, if you're someone who needs regular doctor's appointments because of a health thing, if you're someone who's struggling to find work, of course these things are much more live for you. Of course people feel more angry about it because they feel afraid. Now, if you're in your well-paid job down here in the southeast, those things might not be on your agenda in the same way. But what's interesting is this is now beginning to go across communities, regardless of people's colour. So we're all talking about immigration, fine, that's the current thing. But there's communities who've been here, who are established for some time, who are now having a slightly different response to this, and they're now beginning to be at each other's throats. And I say this is the point why I'm really disappointed with what Keir Starmer did when he labelled people far right. I went in the pub and I spoke to a couple of blokes, and I deliberately spoke to them because they are white working class people. I live in East London, they're very easy to find up there. And a guy said to me, well, you know what, Sean, I've never really been racist because I just don't have enough black people around me. I haven't really thought it through. But he said, hearing Keir Starmer telling me that everybody who has concerns about immigration is far right has made me think, am I? And that's the problem, because for him, he isn't like directly thinking about the numbers of immigration. He's thinking things like, is it easier to get a job? Can I house my kids? And all the rest of that. And that's where the link comes. And until people in the political class understand there is the direct link, and they're giving certain communities more permission to air their grievances than other communities, this feeling will grow, it will fester.
I've heard countless politicians talk about social media activity over the last week. Countless politicians, including the Prime Minister, talk about online social media activity, and people have got to be responsible, and we're going to bring in new laws to clamp down on, people's social media activity and so on and so forth. And as I said, Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk and Nigel Farage and stuff like that have been mentioned time and time and time again. I don't think literally I've heard a cabinet minister in the last week, or I'm not sure I've heard any politician of any party in the last week say, yes, of course the violence is wrong, but do you know what? There are some very deep-lying tensions that have led to this, that have been burning away in our communities for a long time. And we have got to deal with those, and we've got to have a serious national conversation about how we deal with those. No politician is talking about that.
We won't get there. The reason the social media things come, of course it exists. It's a little tiny piece of what's gone on and is a catalyst, but oftentimes politicians will look for something to blame, and this is easily carries the blame. But the problem about focusing on social media, the social media doesn't start anything. At worst, it might amplify, but it doesn't start. So the social media is just connecting people who have these thoughts, and unfortunately, this group of people is growing. There's some good things that came of it. People came out and said, look, we're not really wanting this racism, here's an anti-racist thing, fine. But what led to other people to come out and feel that they can publicly state that they're racist because of what's going on? And until some politician grasps the nettle and says two things. One, there is no two tiers of policing. I think that's been a real big thing. A lot of the young people I've been speaking to believe that now, will cite
But loads of politicians have come out and said that there isn't any two tiers.
But there is, I'm afraid there is. I tell you now...
Keir Starmer said it, Mark Rowley, he was on about it.
They have to say that.
They have to demonstrate. We've arrested... Someone's been arrested for information around the Stockport thing, but a young person said to me, but what happens about the schools when all the schools did all the stuff around islamophobia and all the rest of that? Nobody got arrested for spreading that information. So now people have examples of two-tier policing, and that's dangerous.
One of my viewers has just emailed me and said, Michelle, I want to message you, but I'm also terrified of going to prison if I do. And I think this is quite an interesting thing that's going on in society. I don't know if anyone's been on social media today. It's been filled with Met Police. Look at this post. At Merseyside Police, look at this person. Look at this video. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. You've had your courts today, all of it being broadcast live. People getting sentenced for things that they have written on social media. Of course, I've got to say, people do need to be more mindful of what it is that they're posting. They need to be more considered. And I would argue you probably shouldn't be able to post anything anonymously, and therefore you can be held accountable for what it is you're actually saying. But after the break, I do want to drill into this social media media stuff a little bit more, particularly when it comes to the misinformation, the arrest that you've just mentioned there as well. What do you make to what is going on here? Your thoughts? Keep it clean.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes.
You know the best time to go to a dentist? When? 2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went to Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. This is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants and things like that.
Well,
yeah. I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
Turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now we've got
that's when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down. But in many cases, they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements. So you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then, the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Please, can I have an emergency appointment? I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected." She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, that Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock. Paul Embry and Sean Bailey remain alongside me. A GB News member just got in touch saying, "Oh, I love John Embry. He speaks sense."
John Embry.
Is that your dad?
No, but he was a famous cricketer back in the 1980s, and I do very occasionally I get called John by people who are usually cricket fans.
Oh, well, there you go. This is Paul Embry, everyone. Look, I want to get to the bottom of some of the situations that's going on in this country. And I'll bring you into the conversation, worry not. But I mentioned one of you guys that have messaged me just before the break who said, "I want to message Michelle, but I'm terrified of being sent to prison." And I'm sure you had your tongue in your cheek a little bit when you were saying that. But we are in this situation now where there is this fear being instilled in people. If you retweet something, you could perhaps now be found to be guilty of a crime. If someone perceives that could have incited, I think it was racial hatred. We've had a situation where a woman has been arrested, apparently accused of spreading the false rumour about who that Southport suspect actually was. We've seen lots of kind of situations where we've had jail sentences today where people have been jailed for things that they've posted. One guy, 21-year-old, posted videos of himself, apparently, I quote, roaring encouragement on his Instagram account for those rioters. He was jailed for 2 years. Another fella, 26-year-old, jailed for 38 months, apparently after stirring up racial hatred by using his social media to call for hotels to be set on fire. Another fella, 20 months in jail after publishing written material intended to stir racial hatred. I've got to be honest, got to be absolutely clear. I don't obviously think anyone should be going on social media telling anyone to harm anyone, irrespective of why you want to cause harm to people. It is obviously wrong. I do think one of the things you could do in society is stop people going on social media anonymously, and I think that would clean up social media literally overnight in some ways. But do you think it's right that people are getting these harsh sentences for social media activity?
But let's be clear. If you're going to set a precedent for arresting people for things they've posted, especially when you talk about misinformation, you have to be very clear what misinformation is. Most of the cases you quoted are nice, open and closed ones. Somebody said something pretty awful, you know, get them, set this alight, whatever. That's easy for the law to deal with. But the minute you say misinformation, my truth might not be quite the same as yours. You know, what are you going to do about it? And the law is pretty poor at setting those things apart. And the other thing is as well, with our hate crime laws, other people can decide what you've said. So you may call me your name online, I might be happy with that, but Paul can say he's not happy with that. And
he perceives it was motivated by racism.
So these laws are, you're trying to police human interaction. That's going to be tough.
What do you think, Paul?
I think where there's clear incitement to violence, if you say we should go and burn this hotel down because it's got migrants in, you deserve everything you get. Frankly, you deserve to go to jail for a very long time, particularly if there's evidence that people are likely to act on or have acted on what you've said. I think there's a danger that inaccurate statements, as we've seen in Cheshire, false statements that may have even been circulated without any malice involved, actually fall foul of the law. I mean, this woman who's been arrested in Cheshire for an inaccurate tweet, linking it to the source that said it was a particular asylum seeker who carried out the attacks. Now, someone might do that in good faith. Someone might look at that and think, well, that seems a reputable source, and I'm going to republish that information in the same way that people might tweet tabloid rumours, for example, in good faith. From our own news sources in this country. Now, if you had no intention, if there was no malicious intent, and there was no attempt to incite people, and what you were doing is just furthering the news story by bringing it to people's attention, I struggle to accept that you should be thrown in a prison cell or arrested for that, because that strikes me as a really slippery slope.
But let's be clear. You've used the word intent. In law, it's very hard to prove the intent. And what this would do, I think where you were going, correct me if I'm wrong, this would close down debate in a very serious way. How would you be able to say that you disagreed with something without spreading malicious information?
But is that the intention? Because, I mean, you've got to... I mean, just to be clear, and I feel, and this is one of the problems, I feel like I need to constantly repeat myself, because there's whole hordes of people watching content at the moment, desperate to trying to clip up a sentence here and a sentence there and to post it all out and say, oh, Michelle condones violence. So I feel like I constantly have to repeat the sentence. There is no justification at all for either going and doing a violent act or inciting anyone else to do one. When you talk about people posting, telling people to set fire to hotels with people in, I don't even understand how that would even be in your brain to have those kind of thoughts, let alone sending those kind of messages. So, of course, I think if that's the kind of thing that you're doing, yes, you should be in trouble. Now that I've kind of said that, and I'm not saying but, when COVID was a thing, I do believe that we were almost deliberately terrified into submission and deliberately terrified into following a path of thought, desire and actions that the government wanted us to do. And one of my viewers has just got in touch here and said, Michelle, part of my viewer's mindset at the moment feels that Keir Starmer is almost trying to terrify people because he wants people to stop questioning things like the Burke crossings and things like that, because the viewer suggests he's not able to control those things. What do you think to that viewer sentiment?
Look, this is the point, isn't it? If you
Philip, sorry, that was his name, Philip.
If you try to control what people can say, particularly if it's a dissenting voice, the notion that Philip has come up with becomes a real issue, a real problem. You know, one of my real dislikes of what Keir Starmer's done is label people. You know, you're far right because you don't agree with him, and if you're far right, you can't have any conversation. We can't listen to your concerns, and that's the problem, isn't it? And in all of this stuff, who watches the Watchmen? Who gets to decide what is misinformation? Because in some cases it's very simple. Paul talked about if you're exciting violence. Of course, that's out of order. But if you're expressing an opinion, that's seen as misinformation. And again, I go back to this thing was when the protests around the Batley Grammar School, some of that was misinformation. I don't recall anybody being arrested for that. So it's really important that all misinformation is done, because if people sit at home and start to think, well, if you agree with the government, you're fine. If you disagree with the government, you're not fine. That becomes a problem.
The COVID point is an interesting one, because I think people have had the confidence since then. We saw the biggest attack, I will use the word attack, on our personal freedoms and liberties during that period, with very little resistance in Parliament and some resistance outside of Parliament. But I think since then, I think a number of people in politics and the commentariat have seen the ease with which government was able to get away with, and we can have a debate about whether it was right or wrong. The point is there was very little pushback when it happened, and I think people have looked at that and have thought, the government was able to get away with that so easily that it's given them the confidence now to make those sorts of demands. And I tweeted about it the other day. Paul Mason, for example, calling for prominent left-wing activists calling for Twitter to be shut down. Jessica Seymour, the KC barrister, calling for Twitter to be shut down at the moment. And you think, this is just deranged, actually. You know, the idea that an entire platform on which millions of people are active, and it certainly has its faults, I mean, I know that as much as anybody, but nonetheless, it allows for the free flow of information in a way that much mainstream media doesn't. And you think you can just shut it down like that because one or two idiots have circulated misinformation or you know, been provocative in their comments and so on. And I think the confidence with which they're making these demands. Alistair Campbell this afternoon demanding on Twitter that Douglas Murray be investigated by the Metropolitan Police because of an interview he's given where he essentially said nothing more than, I wrote a book a few years ago, and I said we were having all of these problems with integration within the UK and it was going to spill over into violence, and I've been proved right. If you watch the interview, it was quite a sober interview, and you're getting prominent commentators saying this person should be investigated. It's actually quite chilling, some of the demands that are being made.
But I think the reason they do it is because then the police then respond to it. One of the real problems we've had recently is the police seem to be terrified of the press. The press seem to dictate to the police what things they should take seriously or not. And all of our political power control comes from trust. And I'm beginning to see the level of trust broken down. This constant talk about two-tier is a real physical manifestation of the trust in our society broken down. If that continues, we will get to the point where the country will be ungovernable.
I don't think I've known a time, and I've been a political activist most of my adult life, when there was such a lack of trust and actually quite a cynicism and a distrust in our national and civic institutions, and I include within that the main political parties. Yeah. I think if you look at people's perception of the political elites, if you like, of the mainstream parties, of our national institutions, of Parliament, of the police service, the civil service, and so on, I think many millions of people in this country look at that class, that political class, and think, do you know what, you just simply do not understand me or my life. The country is in quite a sharp decline. Nothing really seems to work anymore. And there's things going on in my community which, A, you don't know about, and B, if you did, you probably wouldn't care about. That disconnect between the political class, the governors and the governed, if you like, is as wide as I've ever known it, I think.
There's a nuance there, because it isn't just this separate political class. There's certain groups who are attached to that political class who have great power, who then can have their message trumpeted harder, or it can be perceived, get away with things that other groups can't get away with. And that's where it's come from. And of course, what we've had, I've never experienced a time where all of our institutions have been so denigrated, continually attacked, anything from the police to politicians, and that eroding of their authority has meant that we're all in a weaker position.
One of my viewers, Colin, he's got in touch and he said, Michelle, where has this notion come from that people are devoid of their own agency of thought? He said, if I put a tweet out telling everyone to jump off a cliff, are we now expecting that everyone's going to suddenly go jumping off cliffs? No, I don't think so. But also, though, you can't deny that actually a great number of people are influenced by what they see and hear online. I mean, we showed clips of, there was people out, I think it was in Birmingham, somewhere like that, and it was a group, and I think I heard a Muslim guy, we played the clip a couple of nights ago, and he was saying he was on the streets to defend because he'd heard that white people were doing acid attacks. Well, where did you hear that people were doing acid attacks? Unsubstantiated claims all over Twitter that white people had been chucking acid out of their cars at Asian women. The police, Cleveland police, then got involved, did a statement saying that they hadn't had any reports of this. They'd had one strange, peculiar report that had no details of anything whatsoever. But those people still carried on repeating those claims. Many people have left those claims up on their sites today, and they haven't been deleted. And a viewer got in touch with me as well, saying he's a football fan, and he's actually quite frightened of going to the football this weekend wearing a football kit because he feels that there's been this constant narrative pumped out to people that all of these rioters, football fans. He's worried that when people come across him, is he going to get duffed up? Because he's a football fan that apparently is responsible for a lot of this violence. So of course, it works both ways, doesn't it? But actually, I have got to say that a great many people, they could be doing with a big, short, sharp shock to shake them up about some of the stuff that they do put online, because a lot of stuff online is pretty damn grotesque, isn't it? Your thoughts on it all. After the break, I want to talk about islamophobia. Do we need an official definition of that or not? That is what some people are suggesting.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. Things are going to hot up as we go through, particularly the latter part of this weekend, especially in the southeast. But before then, tomorrow will be a bit cloudy and a bit damp for some of us because we are going to see a bit of a frontal wave pushing its way in, and that's going to lead to increasing amounts of cloud as we go through the rest of this evening and overnight. But ahead of that, some clearer skies, and we're going to cling on to the clearer skies across eastern parts, but all the time a few showers across parts of Scotland, still pushing through on relatively brisk winds. In the west, where we have that cloud and that rain feeding in, temperatures aren't going to drop much. A bit fresher, though, towards eastern parts where we have some clearer skies. So that cloud and any outbreaks of rain will gradually make their way eastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day tomorrow. So whilst eastern parts will start off the day quite bright, it is going to turn a bit grey later on, and watch out for some heavy rain over the hills towards the west as well. A brighter start a bit further north, lots of fine weather for Northern Ireland, just a few showers, similar for northwest England. Whilst across Scotland there'll be quite a few showers around, perhaps something a little bit more persistent for a time, could be a little bit heavy, and there will be some blustery winds, although the winds not quite as strong as they have been through today. A largely grey, cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through large chunks of the day, but we should start to see something a little bit brighter developing from the west later on as that all pushes away towards the east. Temperatures are going to be a little bit higher than today across northern parts and feeling it with those lighter winds, but further towards the southeast, similar temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Now into Sunday, there could be a fair bit of cloud across central southern parts for a time, perhaps the odd spot of rain, but otherwise it's looking largely bright and a good deal of sunshine around, and with that we are going to be dragging in some hotter air, so temperatures rising, high 20s on Sunday. By Monday we're looking at low 30s in the southeast, but the risk of thunderstorms for some. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M80 northbound in North Lanarkshire. Firstly, 2 lanes blocked for an accident at Junction 6, the Cumbernauld Old Inns junction. Estimated travel time there around 25 minutes. And further along the M80 northbound, it's partially blocked for a broken down vehicle at Junction 4 for Westfield. Slow for the M61 southbound in Manchester. There's a lane closed for an accident between Junction 2, the A580 interchange, and Junction 1, the Swinton interchange. Queues on the M1 northbound in Nottinghamshire, there's a lane closed for a lorry having a tyre change between junction 27 Hucknall and 28 Alfreton. And there's queues in South Wales on the M4 towards Newport at the Bryn Glass Tunnels, junction 26. Partly to do with the Billy Joel concert taking place in Cardiff this afternoon, where a full city centre road closure is in place.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello. Michelle Dewberry, Lord Sean Bailey and Paul Embry remain alongside me. Many people have been speaking out about how unsafe they currently feel. Sadiq Khan, he was one of those people, and it's kind of spawned a conversation about whether or not there needs to be a clearer definition of Islamophobia that's adopted by the government, with the associated laws then attached to it. Let's just cut to the chase. Do you think this is what we need, Sean Bailey?
Absolutely not. If you have a definition of Islamophobia, you're effectively bringing in, a blasphemy law. It would be a blasphemy law. And also, it plays to one of the Labour Party's biggest failings in the last 10 or 15 years, identity politics. Because straight away, if I'm Sikh, why don't we have a definition of that? What about the Catholics? You know? What about the Buddhists? You simply can't separate us in that way.
Let's listen to Sadiq Khan, shall we, and look at what he has to say.
It's really important that we are, not complacent and we're vigilant. I'm really proud of what our police service has done, not just over the last 24 hours, but the last few weeks. Yesterday, more than 1,000 police officers making sure our communities were safe from the threat of the far right. We know from across the country that they're trying to spread violence, racism and hatred. And I'm also proud of Londoners who came together united against racism, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. We've got to recognise, though, the far right's not gone away.
Paul Embry?
No political or religious belief system should be ring-fenced from scrutiny, from criticism and from mockery. If you are a follower of a particular religious belief system or political belief system, you have to accept, like we all do, that belief system, that ideology, is open to criticism and scrutiny and mockery. I'm not suggesting people should be gratuitously offensive. OK, there shouldn't be a law against it, but I don't think it's necessary to be gratuitously offensive. But Islam is it's a belief system that tries to, make bold statements about how we should live our lives, about the world and so on, about political issues, about personal issues. And therefore, it has to accept that people will be forward in their criticisms, and that it cannot be given some sort of special protection. And whether your personal ideology is Islam or Christianity or socialism or communism or conservatism, these are all belief systems at the end of the day, and they have to be open to criticism or scrutiny.
But looking at the other side of this, there'll be loads of Muslim people. I've just mentioned there Sadiq Khan, Humza Yousaf. He was out talking this week saying that he wasn't sure, and I'm quoting him directly, if the future for him and his wife and children is going to be in here or, Scotland or the United Kingdom due to anti-Muslim abuse. So there's a lot of Muslim people that would say, well, hang on a second, because of my faith, I am deliberately targeted. Some people will say, well, I've had my windows put through. You heard stories. I was listening to one on, I think it was Radio 4 or something, where this Muslim teenage girl, she was saying she was upstairs, she was absolutely terrified. You can't live like that. You can't be asked to live like that.
There's laws against that already, Michelle. If you're targeted for one of those, those particular characteristics, then there's laws against that. And of course, no one should target Muslims in any way just because they're Muslims. That would be an appalling thing to do. But it seems to me to be a step change from saying, on the one hand, we shouldn't attack Muslims because they're Muslims, to then saying, actually, we should invent this term Islamophobia and devise a law around it, which essentially, I think, is geared towards ring-fencing Islam from criticism. That's a different thing entirely.
It would be a blasphemy law. And you can't, let's be, I'm a card-carrying Christian. I've had 100 years in this country of hearing people make jokes. Anybody who knows the life of Brian, etc., would know that Christians have had to accept that because it's an important part of our liberal democracy. If you come here with any other religion, be it Buddhist, whatever, you have to accept that as well. You cannot expect us to do something different. And if you are sat at home today and you are in favour of a definition of Islamophobia, would you be in favour of one for Christianity? How about Judaism? One about the Buddhists? One about the Sikhs? One about those with no religion at all?
There you go. Well, there you go.
It's not sensible.
You've asked the people of Britain that question. If you are in favour of the Islamophobia definition and everything that goes with that in terms of supporting laws, etc., to answer Sean Bailey's point then, what's your thoughts on that? Get in touch all the usual ways. After the break, thank goodness for this, Dewberry Tavern is open. I'll tell you what I want to discuss. Bankers' bonuses. The First Bank now has lifted that cap. It's enough to make you want to change career, isn't it? Your thoughts?
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
We're joined now by GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, who is outside Buckingham Palace for us.
Well, let's start with the expenditure, shall we? From the last year, it was £89.1 million. That's what the royal household spent. And one of the core parts of that expenditure was, of course, their big event last May, the coronation. £800,000 went into that. And then we should look at the engagements. You mentioned the number that King Charles made last year. Well, £4.2 million on those engagements, much of that travel. And then finally, how much that costs us all? Well, it's £1.29 per person. That's the cost of the monarchy to the taxpayer. But that really hides the truth of how that cash comes about, because all of the money that the royal household spends is actually theirs being given back to them by the Treasury. It comes from the Crown Estate surplus. That's a £16 billion portfolio they have, and their sovereign grant is made up of the surplus from 2 years prior. So in the year to 2022, there was about £350 million knocking around from the surplus. That was given all to the Treasury, and they were given back 15% as their core sovereign grant. Additional 10% was given towards the resurfacing of Buckingham Palace. That's been going on since Parliament voted on it in 2017. It's expected to take 10 years. But all in all, that's been about £86.3 million. And as you heard, the expenditure was £89 million. So how do they mix that gap? How do they close that gap in and cost out? Well, they make their own money as well from additional sources of income. And that was the gates, the receipts to Windsor Castle and their many palaces across the country, where people have paid about £10 million to visit in the last year.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's Newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you until 7 o'clock tonight. It is Friday, it's 6:45, so that means that Dewberry Tavern is well and truly open. It's been a very tough week. Cheers to everyone at home. Cheers to you. There's a sensible one on the panel. You don't drink, very sensible. Just when I thought my week couldn't get any worse, they've only gone and served me warm wine. Warm wine? I mean, God, are they trying to kill me off or what? Anyway, cheers to each of you at home. The story I want to discuss in my bar tonight, bankers' bonuses. I mean, you will remember this whole debate about whether or not they should be capped. I've got to say, the Tories actually removed the cap. so that actually they could earn up to 10 times the salary in some cases. Well, Barclays has become the first bank to get rid of that cap. I think the original cap, a lot of it was coming down from the EU, and I think you guys then removed it. Anyway, do you support this?
Yeah, look, it's not our money. If it was taxpayers' money, right, then I would have a big problem with it, but it isn't our money. But the thing I want to see is what the Labour government do about it, because they screamed blue murder when it went on, said it was out of touch, but apparently Rachel Reeves is going to do nothing about it. And we're seeing this pattern of saying one thing and doing another from the Labour government. She has every right and the power to reinstate this. If she really believes as strongly as she said in the past, she'd reinstate the cap. But of course she won't, because she realises it's not our money and people need to be able to make some money.
Paul Embry?
The cap should absolutely be reinstated. I think it was completely wrong to lift the cap. It goes back to the kind of greed is good society. These were the people, let's not forget, who crashed our economy in 2007, 2008. And I think it sends entirely the wrong message at a point when many millions of people... We haven't emerged from the cost of living crisis yet. And there are many millions of people in this country who are still struggling to make ends meet, still struggling to pay their mortgages and so on. At the same time, the banks are recording record multi-million-pound profits as a result... Let me just finish, Sean. As a result of the increases in interest rate rises over the last couple of years. And I think now to say, actually, all of the brakes are off again and you guys can just make as many millions as you like in the City of London while the rest of the country is struggling, I think it sends entirely the wrong message and I think is seriously unfair. Completely wrong to have lifted the cap.
Far be it from me to defend bankers. I don't want to be defending bankers, but let's be very clear. There's lots of rules that mean they just can't make all the money they want and do the rest of it. And the other thing as well, Paul, if they make tons of money, they do actually have to pay taxes as well. So we get the money back. You know, we get our share of the money that they're making, of course. But the other thing, our banking system has to compete with other systems in the world. And sometimes we're so busy punishing people for making money, we forget that they're creating wealth. They're paying taxes and they're employing people. And if we chase that away, we do it at our peril. People lose out. And the other thing as well, if cutting their bonuses, capping their bonuses meant that your average man on the street, on any street in this country was going to do better, I would be up for it. But they're not. They're not going to get that money. That money will just end up elsewhere.
I disagree. I think at the end of the day, you can have a progressive taxation system, and
like we do.
I think, well, I don't think it's as progressive as it ought to be.
Well, 1% of people pay over 30% of income tax. 1%.
And well, I mean, I could give you a figure, Sean. The richest 1% of households in Britain have 50% of all the wealth. The poorest 50% of households in Britain have 9% of all the wealth.
Make them pay more tax.
Those disparities are not healthy,
Paul,
and they're actually grotesque.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Paul. You don't have to convince me.
So what do we do about it? Do you think we resolve that by saying, actually, we'll allow the rich to get even more rich, and we'll just hope that the poor get a few crumbs from their table at some point?
All of that's very emotive and sounds lovely, but the point is, you are affecting an industry that pays billions into our NHS, into our schools, into our university system, into our police. That's what you're affecting, and you've got to be careful about where you make these effects. And I'm just saying, this is something that to your ordinary person will sound bad, but doesn't have any real effect. There's much more effective ways.
Why do we have to be careful about saying to bankers and banks who are making multi-million-pound profits at the moment, largely as a result, as I say, of the interest rate rises, but they're paying some tax, of course. Why should we be careful about saying to them, actually, all of these record unforeseen profits, do you know what? We've got huge wealth and income disparities in our country at the moment. We've got public services that are underfunded. We've got people struggling to pay their bills and their mortgages, and we're going to come for you with a windfall tax to make sure that wealth is distributed a bit more fairly. Why should we be careful about that? We should be bold about that.
You've done that classic left-wing thing. You've moved the target. You've just said would come for a windfall tax. Entirely different thing to capping bonuses. If that's what you want to do,
I get that.
Fine, but you've got to do it correctly.
Do them both.
Can I be totally honest? I deserve a medal, quite frankly, for not rising to Paul Embry's ridiculousness when it comes to his tax.
Great self-restraint this evening. Must be the wine.
That's what I mean. I've just sat there and had a swig of my wine instead of calming myself down. Anyway, anyone that thinks that all these bonuses that the banks was adhering to and all the rest of it, you don't know what you're talking about, because people just used to restructure stuff and put the money in terms of salaries as opposed to bonuses anyway. And be careful what you wish for, because you do want the best banking in this country to help the economy thrive.
How many of them left? How many of them left?
See, he's starting. I'm going. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll see you on Monday. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. Things are going to hot up as we go through, particularly the latter part of this weekend, especially in the southeast. But before then, tomorrow will be a bit cloudy and a bit damp for some of us because we are going to see a bit of a frontal wave pushing its way in, and that's going to lead to increasing amounts of cloud as we go through the rest of this evening and overnight. But ahead of that, some clearer skies, and we're going to cling on to the clearer skies across eastern parts, but all the time a few showers across parts of Scotland, still pushing through on relatively brisk winds. In the west, where we have that cloud and that rain feeding in, temperatures aren't going to drop much. A bit fresher, though, towards eastern parts where we have some clearer skies. So that cloud and any outbreaks of rain will gradually make their way eastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day tomorrow. So whilst eastern parts will start off the day quite bright, it is going to turn a bit grey later on, and watch out for some heavy rain over the hills towards the west as well. A brighter start a bit further north, lots of fine weather for Northern Ireland, just a few showers, similar for northwest England. Whilst across Scotland there'll be quite a few showers around, perhaps something a little bit more persistent for a time, could be a little bit heavy, and there will be some blustery winds, although the winds not quite as strong as they have been through today. A largely grey, cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through large chunks of the day, but we should start to see something a little bit brighter developing from the west later on as that all pushes away towards the east. Temperatures are going to be a little bit higher than today across northern parts and feeling it with those lighter winds, but further towards the southeast, similar temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Now into Sunday, there could be a fair bit of cloud across central southern parts for a time, perhaps the odd spot of rain, but otherwise it's looking largely bright and a good deal of sunshine around, and with that we are going to be dragging in some hotter air, so temperatures rising, high 20s on Sunday. By Monday we're looking at low 30s in the southeast, but the risk of thunderstorms for some. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M80 northbound in North Lanarkshire due to an earlier accident at Junction 6, the Cumbernauld Old Inns Junction. Slow for the M61 southbound in Manchester. There's a lane close to an accident between Junction 2, the A580 interchange, and Junction 1, the Swinton interchange. Slow for the M1 northbound in Nottinghamshire. There's a lane closed for recovery work for a lorry having a tyre change between Junction 27, Hucknall, and 28 for Alfreton. Queues on the M25 in Hertfordshire. Firstly, anti-clockwise, 2 lanes closed for a broken down vehicle just after Junction 17, Maple Cross. And there's also delays between Junction 25, Enfield, and 24, Potters Bar due to an earlier broken down vehicle in the roadworks area. And queues heading into Wales on the M4 towards the Brainglass tunnels near Newport, Junction 26. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Tonight